I'm going to cover lesson 50, which is pretty simple and short. But we are going to begin solving trig functions. So not evaluating, we're going to be solving trig functions. So a couple things. When we are solving trig functions, there is more than one answer because of the related angle factor. So for example, I can have 45 and 135 because they produce the same angle with the x-axis. Okay, a couple things I want to review because you're going to need to know is the sign of our angles. So remember, in quadrant 1, it's all students take calculus. So beginning in quadrant 1, we have all trig functions. Quadrant 2 is sine and its reciprocal functions. Quadrant 3, tangent is positive. And in quadrant 4, cosine is positive. Also, I want to review our reference triangles because you should have those memorized and you should also have them drawn somewhere because you need to either have those memorized or have a visual. So here are your 30, 60, 90. It's so hard for me to focus. I'm like a little kid. Sorry. Someone walked in here and I just become so distracted. So here are our reference triangles. Okay, so remember these are our reference triangles. We need, I need the visual still. So don't feel bad if you do as well. All right, so here we go. We're going to solve the following. And I'm going to give you the same domain with the following. I shouldn't say following again. With the domain of 0 degrees is less than or equal to theta, which is less than 360. So this means that our answers should only be within here. Okay, so our answers cannot exceed . Okay, so we're only doing a single rotation of the unit circle. Okay, so the book will tell you what your domain is, and we're going to mess with this later. So it's good to know when we're solving, I'm only looking for angles in that range. And sorry, both of these are degrees. All right, so number 1, we're going to solve sine of theta equals 1 over the square root of 2. Now, what I'm solving for is theta. So this is asking what angles. Okay, you're asking what angles produce 1 over root 2. Okay, now this is sine, so this is opposite over hypotenuse. Okay, now I notice I've got a root 2, so it must be my 45, 45, 90 triangle. I also know that sine is both positive in quadrant 1 and quadrant 2. So in quadrant 1, that would be the 45 degree angle. In quadrant 2, 180 minus 45 degrees would give me the 135 degree. So theta can equal both 45 degrees and 135 degrees because it also produces a 45 degree relationship in quadrant 2. And so these are my answers. Notice these are both positive, so I'm not even going to go to the negative degrees. Okay. So next one, solve 2 plus root 3 times the secant of theta, which equals 0. Okay, so this one is, I got quite a bit to do, but I want you to treat the secant of theta like you would x. So I need to get it by itself, so the first thing I'm going to do is subtract 2 And I'm going to rewrite that. So now I have root 3 secant of, whoops, I don't know why I put an N right there. My apologies. Theta equals -2. Okay. Then I'm going to divide by root 3. And so I'm actually solving for secant of theta equals -2 root 3. Now let's pay attention to the fact that this is a negative. So I'm asking myself, what angles produce a -2 over root 3? So let's talk about secant is the reciprocal of cosine. Okay, and I know that whatever quadrant cosine is positive in, so will secant. So all students take calculus. Now I'm looking for which two quadrants is cosine negative. Well, cosine is positive here and it's positive here. So I'm looking at these two quadrants, quadrant 2 and quadrant 3. Now, 2 over root 3, that's kind of a tough one. But I noticed the root 3. So based on my reference triangle, I have 2 and root 3 here. I know that cosine is, this would be adjacent over hypotenuse. So I know it's the angle of 30 degrees. Okay? The cosine of 30 degrees equals root 3 over 2. So the secant of 30 degrees would be 2 over root 3. So I'm looking at 30 degrees, okay? And it's related angle, but I have to look, it can't be 30 degrees because 30 degrees is positive in quadrant 1. So it needs to be, and it would be this angle here and this angle here. So if this is 30, then this right here is 150. Okay, it would be the angle with a related angle in quadrant 2. So it would be 180 minus 30 is 150. For it to be in quadrant 3, that would be 180, right? Plus 30. So 180 plus 30 would give me 210. So theta equals 150 and 210. And I would stop there because I don't want to exceed 360. I used those two because those are the two quadrants in which cosine is negative. So there's a lot of thinking, a lot of processing in these solving problems. All right, let's see if I have room for this next one. And you know what? I'm going to go ahead and move to the second page so I don't run out of room. All right, so number 3, solve the tangent of theta minus root 3 equals 0. Now remember, I am solving. I'm going to keep the argument together, so I'm going to keep him together. You're not going to ever move theta. So to get tangent of theta by itself, I would add root 3 to both sides. So I'm actually solving for the tangent of theta equals root 3. Now so far, I don't have two sides, right? I only have one side, but I know there's an invisible 1. And so this is opposite, this is adjacent. So here's, whoops, that's a terrible reference triangle. Here's 1, here's root 3. This has to be opposite though. So opposite means across from. So it's referencing the 30-degree angle. Okay, so all students take, I'm looking at quadrant 1 and quadrant 3 because That's a positive. So I'm looking at the two quadrants where tangent is positive, and that's quadrant 1 and quadrant 3. So I know theta would have to equal 30 degrees because that would be the angle that would occur here. But 30 degrees in this would be, again, 180 plus 30 degrees, which is 210. Ugh. I'm like, I've done something wrong. And you've probably, if you're watching the video, maybe you've picked up on it, or maybe you just trusted my, but I'm not paying. If you look at my triangle, root 3 should be opposite. So I'm looking at the 60-degree angle. My apologies. Root 3 should be opposite. And 1 should be adjacent. So I'm looking at 60 degrees. So I'm looking at the angle here, that's 60, and the angle here. So it has to be in quadrant 1. So this would be 180 plus 260, which is 240. So those are my solutions. My apologies for my mistake there. Last one. 3 root, I'm going to go ahead and write the word solve because that's how you're going to see it. Solve 3 root 2 plus 3 cosecant theta equals 0. Now remember, I'm going to keep the argument together. So I'm not going to move theta, but I do need to move the 3 root 2 and the positive 3. Now I recognize that 3 is being multiplied, so I'm going to subtract the 3 root 2 first. And that produces 3 cosecant theta equals negative 3 root 2. Then I'd have to divide by 3. And so I'm solving for the cosecant of theta equals negative root 2, right? Because these cancel. Okay? So this is what I'm actually solving for. Okay? And so I recognize that there is an invisible 1. And I know that cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. And sine is opposite over hypotenuse. And I've got a root 2. So if I've got a root 2, so that would be 1. This is root 2. So I'm looking at the 45-degree angle, right? Because sine of theta would be negative 1 over root 2. So I'm looking at the 45 degrees. However, it is negative. So which two quadrants is sine of theta negative? Well, all students take, did you notice how I skipped over a quadrant? All students take calculus. Sine is positive here. I need the quadrants where it's negative. So I'm looking at quadrant 3 and quadrant 4. You don't have to label them like that. So 45 would be here. So it would be 180 plus 45 and 360 minus 45. So let's talk about why I did that. This first angle, remember I start from here, would be 180 plus 45. And I'm using 45 because that's the relationship of root 2 over 1. This angle here, though, would be much easier if I just subtracted a full circle from 45. So 180 plus 45 is 225. And 360 minus 45 is 315. So theta equals 225 and 315. So hopefully you get some practice with those. That is it for this section. There wasn't a part A or a part B. So for homework 50, you're going to skip number 6, 7, 10, 19, 21, and 28 through 30. Thank you.